an alumnus, former colleague, Nicole Yurcuba, who will be joining us. And then I also have a current student, Emelyn Koene, who will be joining us. And so we'll get kind of like decade spotlights, I guess. Come on up. On what these years have been and done for us. Doesn't matter which chairs. Okay. Go right ahead. And so, as I said, I came in 1993, and at that time, there was one creative writing class offered at Bridgewater College. I'm not sure if it ran every year or not, but I didn't teach it. Someone else was teaching it at the time. And so I did not teach creative writing to Nicole because she was here when someone else was teaching it. I was able to begin teaching creative writing after the pandemic because they slashed our faculty in half pretty well. And Nicole was one of those who went at that time. She and I at the time were running the Bridgewater International Poetry Festival, which has gone dormant as a result of lack of manpower, for no, simple enough. I became interested in writing poetry long after I had been teaching poetry. And I think for many of us, it often comes one way or the other. We are either readers of poetry who become writers, or we are writers of poetry who become readers. And for me, after teaching for decades how poems work and what's going on in a poem, I said, why can't I do this? And so around 2008, 9, 10, I began writing poetry and submitting it for publication. I had written poetry, certainly before that, but not in a way that I would share it. And so my first collection of poems came out in 2010, and it's a poem or a book entitled Just Married, and it's a collection of persona poems. In it, it's from the persona of a young groom, a young man who is entering into marriage and finding out all the things he doesn't know. There's plenty of backstory behind that. And so I'm going to read a couple of poems from this. Most of them are poems of the delight of being in a relationship. So the first one I'm going to read is entitled Hair Drying, because we all know that's one of the most erotic experiences of a relationship. As you will see, hair drying. When I saw you, just out of the shower, both arms raised, towel mulched around your ankles, hair blowing from the dryer you so deftly shook, in that soft domestic image, hair became a crown of leaves, and naked flesh became like Daphne's blotted bark, the Chinese elm that grew outside my bedroom. It was the tree where I first learned to climb, to shinny, trust my arms to hold my weight when my short legs would shift, to stretch and seat in untried ways to gain an inch or two. I learned to trust my body in that tree. And when I'd reached a dizzying height, 2 body lengths above the ground, I'd grab a branch and pendulum around like Tarzan, landing with a satisfying feet first smack against the earth, my arms stretched wide in 7-year-old pride, my own Olympic champion. You set the blower down, pull the plug. You turn and see me watching, smiling, never knowing how the sight of you touches both the man and boy that live inside of me. I'd never seen that dress before. So elegant. A backless, sleeveless sable silk that clung but didn't, shifting shape so subtly as to make mirages real and deft deception all at once. I smiled every minute of the office party, knowing you were there with me, and knowing all the others knew it too. The only prick in my balloon was when you said you'd worn it to your senior prom, with someone now whose name escapes you, someone who had felt that silk upon you long before. Thank you. So anyway, that's a taste of some of the poems from Just Married. In 2016, I had a chapbook published in Canada, now out of print, unfortunately. But for a number of years, I went to the Niagara Literary Arts Festival, was one of the featured speakers there. And eventually they said, well, would you write a chapbook for us? And so Gray Borders Books is the one who put these out. And so I'm going to read 3 poems, 2 by request, from this collection. And this collection is divided, the first half is made up of ekphrastic poems, and the second half are poems about music. And so I'm only reading from the music section tonight. And this one is a poem entitled The Summer Elvis Died. Some of us, 3 of us in this room may remember. Okay. The summer Elvis died. At 17, I sought spies and princesses to love me, a close encounter of any kind still in the future. I could have them for a couple bucks, for a couple hours on the screen. It was a different galaxy, far, far away inside me. I synthesized a world where I felt love way down in the deep I couldn't name, didn't know existed, not knowing how to save my own life, or knowing that it needed saving. Never knowing I'd go without a real song or its emotional equivalent, trying to place it in my spleen or gizzard or appendix. That would take discovery 3 dozen years removed, leaving in its wake a morbid taste for bones. Not knowing dreams die first, and that what I dreamed was really just a bridge too far, and the only rescuers were insubstantial childhood cartoons. Carry on and tell us about where life has taken her, poetically.
We've been friends for 20 years, and what he won't admit is he's still jealous. So I'm Nicole Yurcuba, and I was a student here at Bridgewater between 2005 and spring 2010. But unlike Stan, I grew up with poetry. So my family is Ukrainian, and in Ukrainian culture, we celebrate poetry and our poets. And we are probably the only nation on the planet that has a national poet, Taras Shevchenko. And so from the time we are little all the way up, we recite his poetry, we celebrate him as our national poet. So poetry was just sort of like, I thought this was what people did, was like you sat and you read poetry with your grandmother or your father or your mother, and then I learned that in the big wide world outside Eastern European families, this is not what happens, right? So I came to Bridgewater as a student, and my journey is a little convoluted because I was an English major, and I actually had a professor whose name I will not mention, who I hated her class, and so I was like, I'm going to be a business major. And then I got into business classes, and I thought, I hate all this math, I have to go back to writing, this is what I was meant to do, and so I double majored and became one of Stan's students. And so Stan was my writing mentor, along with Brian Duncan, who is no longer teaching here. And so I started writing, and working with Stan on my poems, and I published at the age of 19, which I thought was pretty cool back then. And then eventually I just thought, this is what I want to do for my career, but we all know poets don't make any money. And so I majored in writing for my master's at Tiffin University and eventually finished my MFA at Lindenwood. But I taught here for a number of years, 4.5 years to be exact, and I helped Stan with the Poetry Festival. And so when I think about poetry at Bridgewater, I think about what poetry used to be at Bridgewater, when for many years we had a large, thriving poetry community here, not just with students, but with the local community and even the international community. Because when Stan and I organized and ran the Poetry Festival, we had hundreds of poets come from, Zimbabwe, the UK, other parts of Europe, and all across Canada and the United States. That's one of the 7 spring dances that we actually perform at this time of year. And so this book was actually the 2025 Silent River Poetry Prize finalist. So I'm going to be reading from this today. And what this collection is it's a series of feminist odes addressed from a female speaker to a male figure that either literally or metaphorically or figuratively represent some aspect of the war in Ukraine. And this is called Ode to a Man Who Will Not Date Me Because I Do Not Look Like an American Supermodel. I ride horses the way my great-grandmother rode, legs and skirt spread, my Kiptar and Vishivanka, a newly discovered star, reins in one hand, my other hand on my hip. This sea of mountains, the chorus forming, the song of myself and my ancestors. And the stream runs cool on the horse's hooves, unlike the way your tongue roughs up my unpronounceable name, clean cut in my own nearly extinct language. What's wrong with yours? This horse's movements are mine, and mine are its, and in these mountains my voice echoes across centuries you don't realize even happened. I light my great-grandmother's wooden pipe as I stare into twilight's blurring pink purple. I straighten my back and find the brightest star hung above my disappearing village. To a man who says he cannot see me. Invisibility happens when you cannot see beyond what society has offered you on a magazine cover or television. In your Twitter feed, I spy the likes of bare-breasted 20-somethings who do not know how to properly punctuate contractions. Thin 30-something singles advertising recent divorces and one-night stands, their exes trash-bagged clothes. What I can offer isn't enough to keep you. Long afternoons discussing Socrates or Skovroda's writings, a photo of books received via mail, a random text, did you ever read Wittgenstein at midnight during a thunderstorm? Terrifying. I can't give you 5 more minutes, dear wolf. I refuse to become the sheep you devour while the shepherd sleeps beside a stream. There's a certain political figure in Charlottesville today, so I heard. So this is called Ode to a Virginian Man Who Tells My Homeland to Go Fuck Itself. Andy Warhol was a Lemko. A Lemko, like me, was Andy Warhol. I stopped believing in revision long ago, so come closer. My paternal grandfather stared through a displaced person camp's barbed wire. My maternal grandfather shrank into himself in Dachau. Operation Vistula flushed the syllables my English hides from Poland. Allow me to drive your pickup truck straight into the local convenience store's gas pumps. Allow me to piss on the stars and bars that designate your hate. You tread on me, not knowing I hide underground, operating radios, sending coded messages regarding your whereabouts and your insurrections. Lean closer, southern sun. I want to see the red on your neck.
And so now we come up to the present, and Emelyn Koene is a current student of mine. She's just completed a honors project, which is a collection of poetry that she has written, and I will let her come speak for herself.
Dr. Galloway told me earlier that I was going to be going last, which is really hard to do when both of you are going before me, because I haven't been writing poetry as long. I've been writing my whole life, to some extent. In elementary school, I wrote a lot of short fiction, a lot of plays. I don't have any of them anymore. I have no idea where they went. And then in middle school, I started writing poetry, but they were all limericks, and I really hope I burned those. But we'll find out eventually when I move all my stuff out of my parents' house. So it wasn't really until college that I started really writing seriously. I came to college pursuing a computer science degree because my parents have PhDs in science stuff, and so I decided that I should also be a STEM person, and that was wrong. So I pretty quickly figured out that I'm really passionate about English and writing, and I always have been. So I'm an English major, communications with minors in art and professional writing, and in a lot of ways, literature in general is a very big part of my life because it tells the story of people, and you can't have history without literature. You can't have a lot without literature, and so poetry has really just been a big part of my life for a while. And I did my honors project this semester on how I perceive emotions, because I find them to be very complicated things. They're very overlapping, and this is sort of a study in how a person sort of feels multiple emotions at the same time. And I guess that's all I really have to say. I'll read a few pieces from this one. I'm going to start with one around the beginning. My sister was actually supposed to be here tonight, but she's sick. So I'm going to read one I wrote about her, actually. It's called Spaceman Eggs. Just a piece of bread, just a cookie cutter, and we made a man. We cracked an egg and placed it in the heart under 5 minutes in a greased pan, served with a glass of milk. Before we spent a day exploring new lands, we traveled to space, we traveled miles. We were adventurers, camped in couch cushions and tamed wild house cats, created a better world, and we were the rulers. We held galaxies in our tiny palms. We retired. We retired our spacesuits and our adventuring cloaks, and our wildcats died. The couch was just a couch. I sat down, feeling ancient at only 17. You were in the kitchen. You gave me toast. A man cut out, a yolk in his chest. You poured a glass of milk. We were astronauts again, eating spaceman eggs. I'm sorry, good one.
Okay.
College, pursuing a computer science degree because my parents have PhDs in science stuff, and so I decided that I should also be a STEM person, and that was wrong. So I pretty quickly figured out that I'm really passionate about English and writing, and I always have been. So I'm an English major, communications with minors in art and professional writing, and in a lot of ways, literature in general is a very big part of my life because it tells the story of people, and you can't have history without literature. You can't have a lot without literature, and so poetry has really just been a big part of my life for a while. And I did my honors project this semester on how I perceive emotions, because I find them to be very complicated things. They're very overlapping, and this is sort of a study in how a person sort of feels multiple emotions at the same time. Milk on the rocks is my drink of choice for a romantic dinner beside the moon. My love and I swore glasses of our finest white as I gaze longingly into the sclera of her eyes. Her eyes hold a soft, milky gaze. Her creative skin bleeds a dreamy luminescence. She can't be contained by the glass that confines her. Her Milky Way beauty is intoxicating. I'm overcome by how much I need her. I'm a glutton for my magical milky moon. My love for her grows the drunker I get.